What's up, guys? Welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and everything in between. Hope you're all doing wonderful today. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and as usual, let's get right into today's Reddit posts. Taking all of the clothes in my size off the rack so resellers couldn't grab everything before I looked. Last week I had time and stopped into a thrift store, and they were just putting out stuff from their truck. I am never so lucky to be there when that happens. The shops are always very picked over with just Old Navy or Target clothes whenever I can go, so I was happy I might find something. I started browsing normally and was finding some good stuff for once. Then I saw a group of 3 women come in. One had a little computer for scanning books. The other 2 had iPads or something. I assumed to check resale prices. Either way, they were clearly resellers and started grabbing stuff after checking labels. I felt a sense of dread because I wouldn't be fast enough to check, so I just swooped everything off the rack and into my cart in my size. When the 2 got to me, they started staring. I said, "What?" And one was like, "We'd like to be able to see what's on the rack too." I said that they could as soon as I was done. She scoffed at me and said, "That's rude. We'd like a chance to shop these clothes too." I just ignored her and started looking at things one by one, taking my time, then putting them right back on the rack. The women were getting mad and snatching things basically out of my hand. I held up a nice top and one of them tried grabbing it out of my hand, and I said, "Excuse you," and turned my back to her. They all got pissy and one stomped away to get a worker. The worker came over and asked what was going on. I said I was looking at the items from the rack, same as everyone else. They said I was hoarding everything, so they couldn't get a chance to look. The worker said that I wasn't doing anything wrong, and then said to me, "Thank you for putting everything back when you're done." I finished what I was doing with the women breathing down my neck and took my clothes to go try on. One of them kept following me and asked me what the my problem was, why I was being such a bitch, etc. I said, "Sorry that you're having a bad day, but it's really not my problem. I just wanted the chance to be able to find nice clothes for once." From my point of view, I didn't do anything different than people who fill up their carts and go try on everything. Plus, I didn't even take all of the good clothes to begin with. Yeah, that is actually mildly irritating, especially because thrift shops are meant for people to get good deals on secondhand items. But those people that came in who were obviously just resellers just try to snatch up all the good items before anyone else can, just so they can sell it online at a profit. Which there's nothing necessarily bad about that, but it does take away from people that actually want to buy this stuff for their own use. And those people were unnecessarily aggressive towards OP too, so they kinda deserve the cold shoulder that OP was giving them. Accused me of sexual harassment. Got fired anyways. I was a supervisor for a call center in 2013. I had worked for this company for about 7 years before working my way up to supervisor. It was for what I thought was my dream job. Decent pay for the time, good hours, and what I thought would be a relaxed environment. My job mainly consisted of doing QA for the phone calls, doing takeovers for irate customers, and making sure the schedule was done weekly. I was supervising a team of about 15 people. Most of them were good, solid people. However, there was this one employee. Let's call her T. T was at the time, 25-year-old female, with me at the time being a 30-year-old male. I made it a point to keep my personal life distant from my team members. However, I could tell T was having issues. Issues to the point where she was coming into work hungover every day, puking in trash cans hungover. I'll point out that if a person opted to leave early with no sick time, this was an occurrence. Me, feeling sorry for T and tired of seeing her throw up, would ask her if she wanted to leave. If I asked an employee this, it wouldn't go against sick time if they left. She opted plenty of times. I didn't want her to get in trouble with HR. Well, T started calling off. A lot. It got to the point where HR told me I had to write her up. I had no choice. So I brought her up to my desk, with the door open and a witness supervisor with me. I told her she was getting a write-up for her absences. She was mad but accepted it, signed the write-up, and that was that. I thought. 2 days later, I got an IM from my boss asking me to come to her office. I get in there and my manager and the head of HR was there. They tell me the VP of HR is on the phone as well. Apparently, T is fighting this write-up, saying I did it because she wouldn't sleep with me. What the f***? I've never been in a room alone with this woman, let alone give her any indication I wanted to sleep with her. No, She was a train wreck whom I had a soft heart for and tried to cut her a little slack. I asked HR if they had any proof of this. Of course, they didn't. I asked if I was in any sort of trouble. My manager hem and hawed, until the VP spoke up and said without any actual proof, no, I wasn't in trouble, but advised me to keep clear of her. I advised them no problem, except I was her supervisor, so that might be a huge issue unless she's transferred to another team. HR told me they didn't have any room for her anywhere else, and to just do my job. Okay then, a little petty revenge then. No longer could T go home early if she was hungover. No quarter given. No help. Had she shown up to work and done her job, no problem. But like I said, girl was a train wreck. She would burn herself. On top of no help from me, I also had to do QA on her calls. Well, enough examples started to show up with her slurring her words, and one call where she didn't mute herself and the sound of her dry heaving could be heard over the phone. Hell, there was one where she fell asleep. I had enough ammunition now for a final write-up. Now I was smart enough to not attempt this alone. I reached out to my manager and HR to be present while I wrote her up. They had already seen my QA notes and the tracked attendance, so they were on board. She was called into a conference room with all three of us. I informed her this would be her final write-up due to all of these reasons. She at first tried to scream I had harassed her and this was a witch hunt. No dice. HR told her before and again there was zero evidence of this. She suddenly flipped out and started screaming and then threw a chair across the room. HR terminated her on the spot. Security guards were called to escort her out. It was a large to-do. I left the room and went back to work after she was escorted out. It was a small victory, but victory nonetheless. The moral of the story: don't dump on those trying to help you out. Apparently, if a house is for sale, you can just break in whenever you want. Who knew? I just came across this subreddit and it reminded me of something that happened a few years ago now, in early 2020, before the pandemic shut everything down. I was still in high school at the time, walking back home from the bus stop one afternoon after school. I lived with my grandparents and they had decided to downsize and put their old house up for sale. So there was one of those for sale signs in the yard with the name and number for the realtor. So I walk up to my house, and there's this elderly couple there. My guess would have been 60s, around the same age as my grandparents. The man was trying to open the front door, while the woman was attempting to look through this bay window we had overlooking the driveway. She was on her tiptoes, trying to peek through the gap at the top of the window shade. So naturally, I went and asked them what they were doing. They said they were just looking at the house because it was for sale. Because I guess a house being for sale entitles them to try to break in, even while there are still people living there. They asked me if I lived there, and started asking me all sorts of questions I couldn't or didn't want to answer, like the exact square footage of the house and where my bedroom was, before asking how to get into the backyard. They seemed awfully confused when I asked them to leave. It was like they thought they had a right to be there, as if I hadn't just watched them try to break in. Later that week, they came back, but this time I was already home. My bedroom window overlooked the street in front of the house. I was on my bed doing something and looked up to see the same old couple staring at me through my window. They smiled at me when I looked up like they were waiting for it or something. No idea how long they'd been there, but it was creepy. I again asked them what they were doing and asked them to leave, but they instead declared that they were just looking at the house, that the house was for sale and they wanted to look around. And if we didn't want people looking at the house, we shouldn't have put the for sale sign out front. I had to threaten to call the police for them to leave. A few days later, my grandparents caught them trying to get into the backyard. The wife had found the latch on the other side and was reaching over the fence, undoing it so she could walk right into the backyard. It was usually padlocked, but wasn't at that moment because my grandparents were out there, so naturally they got caught. They once again used the excuse of the house being for sale. My grandparents told them they should have contacted their realtor if they were interested in seeing the house. They played dumb and said they didn't know who the realtor was when her name and phone number were on that for sale sign they kept going on about. They also could have, knocked on the door instead of trying to let themselves in the front door or into the backyard. My grandparents told them that if they ever saw them again, they would call the police, and that they and the realtor would make sure they were never allowed to see the inside of the house. We never saw them again. I guess they took my grandparents threatening them with a call to the cops more seriously than me doing it. But honestly, what was their deal? I've never been in the market for a house, but last I heard, a house being for sale doesn't give you the right to just let yourself inside at any time, especially when the owners still live there. My grandparents love critiquing houses that are for sale, and regularly go to open houses in our area, even though they're never planning on buying another home. I wonder if that couple was the same, but just convinced themselves they were entitled to let themselves into any building that was up for sale whenever they wanted. Woman at hospital refuses to check in. This just happened. I'm still sitting in the lobby in awe of the event, and I wanted to write it down while it's still fresh in my mind. I'm waiting for a ride home, so I got to witness a majority. For blood work at this particular medical center, there is a digital kiosk to sign in, rather than speaking to a desk. The kiosk is very simple. Put your ID and insurance card in the machine. It'll scan, check you have a blood work request, then confirm it to the room in the back. While I was waiting, an older woman comes up to the front and entirely passes the kiosk and attempts to open the door into the lab. The door, not locked, is opened, and nurses quickly rush up to stop her, leading to an argument in the lobby with around 3 nurses blocking the door. Nurse 1 says, "Ma'am, you need to check in and wait to be called." The woman says, "I'm not doing that shit. You can't pay me to touch a damn computer. I don't even have an ID. You can look up my information in the back." Nurse 2 says, "It doesn't work like that here. The kiosk is very simple. You can manually put in your information if you don't have an ID." "I'm not doing that. This is unnecessary. The office in the other town over doesn't have one. It's hard enough to put a card in the grocery store machine. Now you're making me do it here? We're not that other location. I'm sorry, but we need you to check in. I can help you if you need." "This is ridiculous. Just look up my information. I'm an old woman. I won't touch a computer. I don't touch a computer anywhere. You can't force me." "Ma'am, we're not forcing you. It's just how our system works. I can do it for you if you have your information." "Fine, do it then." From there, she proceeds to announce her personal information very loudly. Nurse inputs it. "Do you have an insurance card?" "Obviously. I don't have it on me. You can look it up." "Unfortunately, I can't. Our system doesn't work that way. Do you know your insurance ID?" "Yeah, it's number." "There, you're checked in. No problems." Finally. I don't understand why this new generation is making everything so difficult. You can't expect me to use a computer. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone I know or any of these people behind me. For a 1 to 10, I'd give it a 0. "I understand, ma'am. You're signed in though. You can take a seat now." "I can't go back? I just went through all that trouble to sign in. I'm an old woman. This is already stressful." "There's someone in the back already. You'll be called in soon." "I'll make sure to never come to this location again. Hurry it up then." The nurses went into the back and she took a seat somewhat close to me and began talking to the other people in the lobby. Only one other person engaged her, and she started talking about pancakes like she didn't cause a spectacle just now. Is this what secondhand embarrassment is? When she was called, she left her pile of belongings on the chair and went to the back. You know, if an older person struggles a bit with technology, there's no shame in that. But the problem is her outright refusal to even try and then being proud of her ignorance. But at least they don't have to worry about her leaving a bad Google review. Alright guys, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, and also hit that subscribe button so you can be notified when we upload. So have a nice day everyone, and I'll see you next time.